No, we love Mike. We love you, Mike. It's not. How's everybody doing? Standing up. I didn't know we were going to be standing up. You changed it up. So I'll have a little opening statement. First of all, appreciate y'all being here. Appreciate everybody coming out today. Very exciting times right now. We obviously just had practice, our first mini camp practice as we're in the voluntary portion, phase 3. Man, it's fun to see the guys out there on the grass because you do all the work but yet to see them out there moving around and see where your team really is, that's fun. There's been a lot of really positive energy in the building. So very exciting times right now. The most exciting part is we're going to go make this team better here in the next few days and having the opportunity to do that. Very confident. We're aligned as we go into Thursday and very excited, again, that with the opportunity to make the team better. A lot of people to thank as we get ready to and get prepared for that process. And it starts with our owner, Arthur Blank, all the unwavering support that he gives us, literally any resource that we need to be successful, he provides us with. So couldn't be more thankful for Arthur. Kyle Smith, my right-hand man, in regards to all player acquisition. Kyle's literally obsessed with the process. That's why I love him so much. And so he's been outstanding, like he's always been here. And you get into the player personnel department, the college scouting department. This is their baby all year. The late nights, the rental cars, all the travel that they do, the time away from their families, and they're really the backbone of this process and all the work that they put into it. Very appreciative of them. We're very detailed and organized because of the work that they put into it. The pro personnel department with not only the players that we're able to sign in free agency, but even players that you sign during the season, off the street, the players that we took off practice squads, and now to get to see the way they're developing. We're excited about our team right now. We have a lot of flexibility going into the draft because of all the work that they put into it. So very appreciative of them. The coaching staff, obviously from Raheem on down throughout all the coaches, all the work that they put into it. We rely on our coaches a lot in this process. We lean on them a lot. And in terms of giving us their vision for the players, what we have here, what we're looking for, and then in all the evaluations, it's been an excellent process. We have a very smart, passionate, forward-thinking group, and so it's been really fun going through that work with them. And then getting to football tech and analytics with Steph and Danny and their staffs, the training room, the equipment room, player engagement. So much work goes into this, the medical staff. Just very appreciative, really, of the entire building. You know, we get out of the season, we got the coaching search, then you got free agency, then you got the draft, and it really hasn't stopped. And really, most importantly, the families. My wife's the one that brought those cookies, and she comes up here to bring cookies just to see me for a second because it truly is like our families make a lot of sacrifices for us to be able to do what we do. So very appreciative of all our families and all the work that's gone into it. And, again, we're very excited as we get prepared to go into Thursday. Any questions?
Tell Mr. Ryan thank you for the cookie.
I will let her know, Led. I'll tell her Led said thank you.
That's for everybody.
Yes, sir.
Just got the news that the tampering review will not be concluded. Does that help you all plan for the draft?
Well, look, the league has been very communicative with us and throughout the whole process. Really appreciate them, and we've obviously cooperated, provided all the information, and again, not really any update from our end in regards to that. We'll just continue to cooperate and control what you can control. We'll get ready for this draft, and so we're excited moving forward.
You feel like y'all acted above board in all of this?
Again, not something we can talk about as long as it's under review. I know you guys respect that, but we've been cooperative with the league, and the way they've communicated with us, we appreciate the process they've gone through. So, but not something, Josh, we can talk about right now.
How are you all, seeing things? Arthur Blank said the pre-draft meeting was done yesterday, but just how's everything stacked for that first-round pick for you all?
When did you talk to Arthur?
Yesterday for Matt.
Oh, that's right. For Matt said I didn't. I was just thinking. You kind of said it like you just talked to him, like it's.
You did, yes. Right there.
So yes, so we did. We had a meeting with Arthur right before that, and I'll say this, Led. We've obviously finished up our meetings, and we finished up all of our we've had the medical meetings. We finished up with the scouts, sent the scouts home at the end of last week. We still have another security meeting coming up, and so there's still boxes to check. We feel great about where we are, but it really goes down to the wire, and the hay's not in the barn until we turn that card in. So we feel great about where we are, but we're still working through it.
With all the anticipated movement about the quarterbacks, does this seem like this is a year where you're fielding more phone calls about your pick at 8 and what may happen? Or are you making more, taking more, given the layout of this year's draft?
Yeah, it is unique because when you can have possibly that many quarterbacks going right at the top, then it's going to push down some really good skill players. And so depending on, there could be a lot of action at some different spots around our pick. So right now those calls are just exploratory. So we have the conversations, but you really don't get into what the value would be. It's just a lot of preliminary calls because, to your point, they won't happen until it's really on the clock, right? Whenever you see what players are there. And then when it gets close to your pick, you start getting the calls that say, hey, if our player's there, then this is what we would do. And you start having those real conversations of what it would take. And what we have to do is know at each pick what's going to be the value to go down. So this is what it would take for us to move from this pick down 3 spots or 4 spots or 10 spots, whatever it is. We would take this value, and these are the players we would get. And you're just weighing the value of this player in this pick compared to this player at 8. Or, again, if you're going up a tick to get another player, you're just kind of weighing out those values. But to answer your question, until you're really on the clock, that's when it becomes real.
Is it fair to say that you'd be favorable for 4 quarterbacks to go within the first 4 or 5 picks?
You just never know, man. It's, again, the way it's a strong, just the fact that we're talking about possibly 4 quarterbacks going before that point, it shows how strong that quarterback class is. And there's some really good skill position players that are going to be at certain points that could go 1, 2, 3 in other drafts. So to your point, having such a strong quarterback class does help the entire draft.
I'm interested how you kind of weed out those phone calls, like especially when you're on the clock. Like, how do you determine whether or not, okay, this team is a little serious, or I'm gonna be willing to negotiate with this team all the while somebody else may be calling during that moment trying to move up?
Yeah, it's all the work that good question that goes at this point, right? So we're having all those calls at this point, and so we really know the teams that have some real interest, and sometimes there's surprises on the clock, but from this time up until the draft, we're having, not just myself, but Kyle Smith and other people, we're having those calls and having all that communication. So you know the teams, you can expect the teams, and then if you see a certain player getting to a certain point, then you know, okay, there are going to be more teams that call. So we kind of sort through that throughout the process. But if teams are calling you around your pick, it's pretty serious.
You mentioned enjoying seeing these guys on the grass for a couple, and I know it's just been a couple of days.
Yeah.
But putting those 2 days in the mix and the last month, what has Kirk Cousins' impact been so far that you've seen?
It's been great. It's been great, Josh. He really hit the ground running, and we knew the excitement about Kirk Cousins is he's a multiplier on and off the field, and we know that. And so when he gets in the building and in the training room, and really everything's over there right now, right? Everything's together, and it's really cool. But the training room, in the weight room, on the field activities, everything he's done in the meeting room, he truly is the work that he does. He sits right in the front of Raheem's meeting, notes everything, and he's like a nerd up there. Just he's obsessed with it. And so that's been great. And we have a lot of hard workers on this team. There's a lot of guys that are here right now, and they're rolling. And we know it's the offseason, and we know they have to separate a little bit from the season and take a little break and decompress and all that stuff. But these guys are in here rolling, from the meeting rooms to the work that they're doing out there with Griff and his staff, the new player performance group. But it's been outstanding from not only Kirk, but that's what we love. The most exciting thing about him is we know his makeup and his mentality. And we know that fits what we're about in this culture. We've been working hard to build. So, you definitely feel the impact.
Was any part of your desire to get a quarterback in free agency versus waiting for the draft to stay out of what is a very fluid situation right now for teams that need a quarterback? If you still needed one, you would be in the middle of some at 8. You know, your fate would be in other people's hands. How much of the free agency decision was we want to not let that happen.
Yeah, Josh, you just said it. When you're at 8, it's different if we're at 1 or 2 or right, but you're at 8. So there's too many variables in front of you, so you can't guarantee anything. You just don't know. I mean, if quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4, it's not going to surprise any of us, right? And so being at that point and not knowing that, it's different if you're more in the top 5 or higher regarding your pick. But there's a known commodity that we had an opportunity to sign, and it doesn't keep you away from signing quarterback. Look, whether it's in the first round, the 7th round, after the draft, a trade, it doesn't take you away from doing more at that quarterback position, right? But yes, having that opportunity to sign a known commodity with the right makeup and we really covet here, then because who knows what's going to be there in the draft, to answer your question.
At least one man's humble opinion, you've done a good job at doing best player available in the draft. If the best player available that comes at 8 is another pass catcher, is that something that you would consider trying to trade out or look at? Or with the optics of taking a pass catcher 3 straight years in a row, what would you say to the fan base who might lose their minds to that?
Do you think they would? Would that not be good?
I'm not going to speak for anybody else. Listen, you take best player available, I'm happy.
Right. And so, when we talk about best player available, it's really it's best player available for us, right? Because I think sometimes when people hear best player available, they're looking at some of the experts list, right? And you have 32 different draft boards. They're probably a little more similar in the top 10 or in the top, but they can get very different as you go through the draft, but you truly have 32 different draft boards. When you talk about best player available, really you're talking about best player available for us, and the key is not reaching for needs. So in most cases, you're going to you got the different categories, right? You have the impact players, you have the elite players, you have the solid starters, you have the functional starters, you have the role players, the developmental, you have all these categories. So in most cases, you're going to have more than one position in that category. So now you can look at, okay, these are the players we have in this category, so let's go with the position need or the more premier position, call it. You can choose. What you don't want to do is if you have a couple players in this category and you have more of a need and it's down this, and so as opposed to taking an impact player, you're taking a functional starter, or that's the key with that. Somebody said the other day, I think it was DeJuan Jones who spent time in Baltimore. He said today's surplus is tomorrow's necessity, right? Tomorrow can be 2 years from now, right? We're getting these drafted players for 4 to 5 years. Tomorrow can be August in this league, right? So we always have to look at, and again, you hear stories about players at different points that you didn't take because you had a better need. So I'm saying all this to say is that we always want to bring in impact players and continue to build a team. But where need does come into place is when you have several players in the category, which in most cases you do.
I know you won't obviously tell us who you're going to take with your first pick, but from the NFL Combine to now, how often has that first pick changed, or has it been set the whole time since the Combine?
Yeah, Allison, it's never set, right? You have players that you're really excited about throughout the entire process, right, where it's during the season, and then you keep getting more and more information, right? So you go through the season, and that's what's cool about being in constant communication with the college scouts, and because you got guys that you're excited about, and you do have this moving board, right? And then you get more information as you go through the all-star games. You start getting around the players more. You get the confirmed measurables, which is a big deal, right? And you get all that information, and you continue to get it, and things continue to pivot. You get to spend time with the players, all the exposures, as much weight as we put on character and makeup. That's the most important thing that we can do. So getting around these players is very important, right? And it's not just about being a good human being. We also want players that love this game and are passionate about everything they do. And so spending more and more time with them, spending time with their coaches, and getting – so then you, again, Combine – the 30 visits, all the things, all the different categories, it continues to, even now, we're continuing to gather information. So you have your favorites, things continue to shift as you get more and more information. And then you have a good feeling about, okay, these are the players that we're really talking about. But then, Allison, you get in the draft, and we got those variables in front of us, right? We got 7 variables in front of us, and next year we're going to have a lot more variables in front of us, right? So so you never really know who you know the players you covet and the players you like. You really just have to really stack that thing up. And like right now we have to stack up 8 players and, okay, this is how we feel. And then you continue to go down so we can have those conversations, to your point, when you get those opportunities to go down. So you really can never, unless you're Chicago, you can't say for sure who that player is going to be.
When would you, I guess in a perfect world then, when is that board stacked with at least some of your favorites? Like, is that the night before? Is it a couple hours before? Is it right now? Is it already stacked?
The final print. So the final print, we'll do a day of print of the board. And that doesn't mean that we have it stacked, but there's always these little movements. We're still, again, we have another security meeting coming up. We're doing more background. It could be a small pivot or a small move or a small and so we continue to go all the way. So you feel good about certain things, but we don't do the final print of the board until the day of.
When you've made the financial commitment you've made at quarterback, is
Yes, sir.
it natural you want to protect that investment? I know there's a lot been said about this being a strong offensive line, but where do you stand about this line in terms of pass blocking specifically, and do you feel that's a need that is still a need for this draft?
Well, we do. It is, number one, it's a very strong offensive line, and top to bottom. There's some good offensive linemen in this draft. I would say we feel very good about our offensive line, and they've all been out there the entire time, and so we feel really good about our line. And yet, to your point, you always want to we always want to bring in competition at every single position, right? It's not, we never want to get comfortable, even though we like our offensive line. It's too. You don't know how you're thinking big picture. Again, the players you draft are getting for the next 4 to 5 years. So whether you're taking developmental players or players to come in and compete right now, and all those factors, you definitely want to continue to add there. So we're excited about our offensive line, excited about this draft class of offensive linemen, and yes, we could definitely take linemen at some point.
You made the announcement.
Did you have another? Yeah, follow up.
Just a quick follow-up, just to go back to what you originally said.
Yeah.
About seeing these guys on the field, it's got to be comforting for you to see Kirk getting to this stage and being that he's gone through a recovery.
Yeah.
Can you just comment on where he is and what you've seen?
Yeah, you know, when you're going through those, much like we had our medical meeting last week on the college prospects, and there's always, so you have this grading system that you go through, and each players get a medical grade. We lean on the experts from Kyle Hammond and Destin and Jake Fowler. We lean on the experts in regards to the medical grades that we get, but the other factor in that is the makeup of the players, right? So if we have a college player with this medical grade, another college player with this medical grade, but then we got this obsessive worker that with a high makeup and high football character and high, that we know this guy's going to get the most of it, and then you might have a guy over here that's a little lazier and kind of not a self-starter, not a, okay, then these, you know, the medical grades are a little bit different. So you gather all the information, you look at the history. At the point that we're in the world right now, it's a little bit different with some of these. So you look at the history, look at all the data, and then you compare that to the makeup of the player. So in that case, the makeup of Kirk, we know that he's going to take advantage of anything he can do to get himself ready to go in peak condition, that he's going to do that. So that's where that comfort, you got that comfort from.
As opposed to last year, this year you're paying a top quarterback, you know, kind of top compensation compared with the rest of the league. Does that change from your perspective how you try to build out the rest of the roster when you have to now allocate a certain amount of capital to that one position?
Yeah, you still want to think long term and think big picture, right? Like I said earlier, you could take a quarterback at any point when you're thinking big picture. Every player you sign, it's going to adjust how you do business in other areas. But it's always been our goal to add good players, add good football players at every level and continue to develop them. And you're never just going to be a prisoner of the moment. You're always going to think big picture. So it wouldn't stop you. It wouldn't change the way we approach this draft. It wouldn't change. Look, we going into the offseason, we knew, okay, hey, first thing we got to do is we got to hire the right head coach, which we're very excited about. Next thing we got to do is find the right quarterback, and then we go from there.
Coincidentally, I mean, you've been at 8 for 3 years in a row, which I guess gives you a little practice at game planning for this particular pick.
Is it 3? It's not 3, right? 2.
2?
Yep.
Sorry, my bad.
Mm-hmm.
This will be the
This will
third.
be the
This would be the third, that's right. It'll be 3 years in a row, right?
Okay, yeah, you're right. That's right. Yeah.
I guess what I'm asking about your draft process at this point, I mean, you go through this a couple of times in iterations. I mean, obviously, you strategize differently through in
Yep.
the 20s, whether, coincidentally, again, being at 8. How much has the process tweaked for you over the last 2 to 3 years of doing this?
It has tweaked. It really, we look at it every year in regards to the process and how we're going to operate. And regardless of the results, we're always looking at the process and how we can improve it, right? We take everything with a humble approach and look at how we can improve as we step away from things. And with this, the cool thing this year is we got a lot of new coaches that have done things some different ways, particularly with Raheem and Jimmy and Zach being in LA. A lot of respect for Les and Sean and that group and how they operate up there. And so there were some unique things that they liked in the process that we've said, okay, well, this makes sense, because what we're always trying to do is be as efficient as possible, right? We're going to have alignment, and we're going to be together as we move forward, but we want to be efficient with everyone and make sure we're doing the right things moving forward. So there are some things that we adapted in terms of the way we meet, the way we grade, just some small tweaks to improve in some areas. And, yeah, you continue to learn and adapt as you move forward. But I would say this year there were some changes, particularly having coaches come from some other places.
Terry, what do your next couple of days kind of look like, really? I mean, obviously, each draft is unique, but, is there kind of like a routine that you have, like on the Wednesday, and then the Thursday, as I'm sure calls start kind of coming in?
The main thing, so like I said, we have some meetings tomorrow, some security meetings and some planning meetings, logistically and some stuff like that to make sure we're sharp on draft day. But besides that, it's a lot of phone calls. It's with other teams, GMs, gathering as much information as we can, communicating with those teams to make sure that we know, again, who's serious about moving up or down and where that's going to be. So I would say from this point on, and look, you're constantly watching tape. That really doesn't stop. I mean, this is, excuse me. I wish I had water or something, D. Yeah. Come on, lad. What are we doing? David didn't even hook me up with no water, man. No, I'm not going to drink that. I'm sorry, Miles. I'm joking, man. Come on.
I know.
You good? Appreciate it, man. Lightning lead. They used to call them lightning lead. Did y'all know that?
That's proof right there, man. I mentioned that a couple. Most people.
One night after the draft, you must have been having a cigar or something. He started sending pictures of himself when he was playing ball. It was like, I'm sorry, Miles. All right, where are we at?
Yeah, I guess like fielding calls.
Yes, so that's what it is. It's a lot of you're still watching film, you're still working through things, a few logistics meetings. Like I said, we have a security meeting, but mainly that's what you're doing, making all those phone calls, catching up, because all those phone calls are constantly coming. And when you've been in meetings for 2 straight weeks, right? So there's some things you got to catch up on in regards to that. But that's what it is. You try to make sure you talk to teams so you feel real good going into Thursdays as you plan to make sure we're sharp on draft day.
You've been analogy that the draft is like going to the grocery store and you don't want to go hungry. Now,
Yeah.
you've been to the sweet treat store to but do you feel like this team could play now because you lost a couple starters from last year's defense that haven't been replaced at this point?
We do. We feel like we could play now. We'd be excited to go play a game right now, regardless of where our team is, right? We do. We have a lot of confidence. It's not just about what you signed in free agency or the players you drafted high, but there's other players that could have been on our practice squad or could have not played as much last year that are really showing growth, because that's what it's all about. All these guys have to take another step. We have some guys that played well last year, but now it's about taking another step. And the exciting thing about the draft is to continue to add competition to the team. But when we look at the team outside, it really is fun to go see those guys outside and to see them move around. because we are excited about our team right now. But again, we're going to continue to add competition.
Terry, how do you feel about, how do you balance like best player available for us? I like that. I like how you put that. Versus like, say for instance, like 4 quarterbacks go in the top 5 or whatever.
Yep.
And obviously that pushes a lot of guys down, like Marvin Harrison Jr. and all that stuff. Obviously those guys are game changers, but how do you balance that between having a need for edge rusher and corner? So how do you, what's the thought process of probably like, okay, I know this might be best player available, but there are some, might be able to get the best defensive corner or defensive edge rusher in the draft.
Yeah, and then as you go through that process, if you're looking at, if we believe we have an impact player at this position, that position, and this is a need position at a premier position, then we're going to stick with that, right? But where we're going to guard ourselves is if, look, if you, like you said, some really good players could be staring at us, and if you got this impact dude right here that we know is going to make a difference, whatever position that's in, and then we got more of a need down here, right? Let's get this dude because you know what? 2, 3, you know what I mean? You're getting him for the next 5 years, right? So then, and then you look back a couple years from now and look back and say, man, why didn't we take this guy? He could have really helped us right now, right? So that's where it comes into play. But that's where the discipline comes to stacking the board correctly, having those players in the right categories, in the right buckets, so you can make those decisions. And there's other factors because we also got to look at, again, we focus on character and makeup. And so do they check those? Because sometimes you might have a dude up there that doesn't fit what we're about. And that's where we have to have discipline too. That's why you always read the character before you start watching the tape. Because if you watch the tape first and then you read the character, you start making excuses. And it gets a little harder to go through it. So, but we want to make sure that if you have a guy up there that fits everything we're about, and then he is a major impact player, you're not going to reach in those areas. But in most cases, I would say that you do have other players that at some premier positions need positions in that same category where you can make that decision.
And as far as that, right, so just hypothetically speaking, so there's a great wide receiver right there. You take him, right? So are you in the – before you decide,
my man's not okay.
before you decide to take him, are you thinking about those need position spots that may be later on in the rounds, or do you even think about that? You just focusing?
No, that's a great question. So we have to do with the draft, right? Because every draft is different, every draft board is different. But what we always need to know is, okay, these are the positions that are deep, top to bottom. Okay, these are the positions that are top heavy. And to get a player, then it's going to have to be in the first 2 rounds to get someone that's going to come in and make your team, make an impact on your team. And these are the positions that there's not anybody at the top, but then there can be more guys at the bottom. So you have to know the strengths and weaknesses and how each position's stacked. But then the variable in that is you can get into the draft. Like we can say this position's really strong, but if they have a huge run on them, because it's all about what's going to be at your particular pick, right? So it all comes down to the draft and how the board actually comes off. But going into it, we do have a really good feel for each position, where it is, and have a feeling that, okay, this is a position that we can address in the middle rounds, in the late rounds even. This is a position that we can. If we want to address this, we have to address it here. You do weigh all those factors.
I'm really curious about the security meetings that you're talking about.
Yeah.
I hope this doesn't.
You can come, Tori. It's right now. Just come to the.
You want me to
come in?
Can I come?
Yeah.
Is that my
You're
official
welcome.
invitation? Okay. This may sound ignorant. I hope it doesn't come across that way. But who's in those meetings, and why do you use the word security to describe them?
I think because maybe because Willie Thomas is in there and he's the head of security. But it's really background, right? We have a lot of groups that not only in-source in terms of background checks. We go through a lot because our scouts do such a good job gathering all the background information. But then you have other resources that you utilize to get all the background on the players and to make sure. So we've had those meetings already. This is the last. Again, I call it security meeting because you're going through background checks and that kind of stuff.
We have become accustomed to seeing you at this press conference
Yeah.
sitting beside the coach. So since Raheem is not
Yeah.
today, is that reflective of any changes in how the actual final decisions will go down on draft day?
No, not at all. And we talked about it. And with this particular press conference, Raheem will be After each pick, he'll be in. We'll be sitting next to each other, maybe with waters, just in case we start. If Raheem would have been here, he would have had a water, but no, it's just the GM, so he's not worried about me. But to answer you're right. But to answer your question, no, we just talked about this one and thought it made more sense just for me to be here. But after the draft, it'll be both of us. And the process hasn't changed. Everything is about alignment. Everything's about collaboration. It's been really fun going through it, this whole process with him and the coaches, because it's the Colin Powell quote about loyalty. And we've all heard it that, hey, when you're in those meetings, that when you're going through, when you're debating, then we want independent thinkers. We don't want groupthink. We want independent thinkers giving their opinions. But then as we work through it and you walk out hand in hand. So when we talk about alignment, we're aligned, but there's been a lot of debate through this process. Raheem does an excellent job actually promoting debate, and as we're in that process, and he's so unique in the way that you look at his background, his acumen. So in terms of as an evaluator, the way he evaluates, the communication, and the way he has a clear vision for everything you're looking for, and to be able to articulate that to everyone, so we're all on the same page. But those meetings are really fun, and there's a lot of debate in those meetings. But as we continue to work through it, we watch more tape, do more digging, we come out of line, and everything will be cohesive, and we'll do everything together. It's a partnership.
If there's like a tie, who breaks it? Like who, you know what I mean? Like if that debate keeps going, like who has the ultimate final say? I guess.
Yeah, it's, like I said, it's all, we do it all together. Like, because we go through all that throughout the process, right? And we stack them, and there could be a difference where this particular coach or this particular scout or Raheem or myself or whoever, we see some things differently. We want to see them differently. If there's groupthink, that's not what we're looking for. We want to see it differently, but we work through it. Now, what he does when you're in meetings is, you ever watch those Batman, the old Batman movies with the sound effects?
Oh, yeah.
So that's what Raheem does when you're watching tape with him. He makes if he likes a guy, he makes all those sound effects, like when and so it's a good hit, but he makes this like, and I'm not going to make an idiot out of myself and start trying to make the sound effects that he makes, but he's very animated, and he's standing up and he's moving around, so you can tell when he really likes a guy, because he's got that kind of passion. But Allison, we go through all those right now. We go through all those debates and all those, and if for some reason you're on a completely different page, that player is probably not for you, right? Because we're all working towards the same thing, but you need all the different perspectives. And again, I appreciate that about our staff. These meetings were excellent because you do have, again, one of Raheem's terms, he talks about disagreeing without being disagreeable. There's a way to go about it, right? There's a way to have the right humility, to listen to everyone in the room, to go about it, and you still have, but it makes you go watch some more tape, and let's keep digging through it. But we're going to do everything together.
When looking at potential picks, what are some off-the-field characteristics that you're really looking for?
Yeah, off the field, it's all about, again, it starts with makeup. We want high character players, and not just good people off the field. And right, it's not, we've all made mistakes, but it's, are you a good person that's made mistakes, but you have the right humility to try to grow and to try to learn and to try to, what kind of person truly are you? That's why we do so much digging. That's why we talk to so many people. And then you get into the football character, and that's about, in the building, the true passion for your sport, because there can be some really good people that aren't obsessive about what they do, but the true passion, the work ethic, we want guys that are football smart, and not just you don't have to be but are you going to work at it? People learn differently, but how do you learn, and are you going to put in the work to do that? How you do anything is how you do everything. How do you work in the weight room? How do you work on the field? And do you bring that passion to everything you do? Because it's your multipliers. When you bring in players that don't fit, then it doesn't work. If we try to put a player in our offensive line room that's lazy, good luck. We won't have to release him. Chris Lindstrom will do it. He'll just, we'll be one less player. It's just the truth. And once you start building that type of culture, you have to add to it in the right way, or the players are looking up and asking us what we're doing. So it's about not just the off the field, those areas, but in the building, the passion, and everybody's not leaders. They don't all have to be leaders, but are you a good teammate? Are you endearing? Are you trying to learn about your teammates? Are you figuring out ways to make people around you better?
Got time
Time for a few more.
Why
Yeah,
is
Terry,
there,
go ahead.
Why is there the caveat this year of the for us rather than just best player available?
It wasn't planned, Taryn. It wasn't. I think the reason I said that is because if you just look at, you kind of have to, there are 32 different boards. You know what I mean? And you kind of got to think about it. I think sometimes when people think best player available, well, this is the best player available. Why didn't they take him? But it's for our team, based off our board, based off our communication, based off everything that we need. Teams are different too, like in terms of our vision for how we're going to use a player and in those areas, you know. So it's the best player available, but we're going off of our board and our internal dialogue.
When you talk about this growth in players and kind of growing into this team, you've had some that change defensively we expect from last year's team, but maybe going back more similar to what it was a couple of years ago.
Yep.
How does that affect guys like, for example, D'Angelo Malone or Troy Anderson, who were drafted under that kind of scheme, who may be coming back to it? Would they have potentially, in your eyes, a better chance to, play more and be more involved?
Well, the cool thing about our coaches right now, talking about Jimmy Lake, Zach, Marquise, those guys are really smart, but they're very forward-thinking and very flexible and open-minded. So we really want ultimately good football players. I know Jimmy said it before that, hey, we're going to be hybrid and we're going to do different things. So I know this is a type of – we have a clear vision for what we're looking for and what we want to bring in, but I know our coaching staff is going to get the most of our players that are here, and they're going to put them in position to be successful. So I'm excited about those players and other players because I believe if the skill sets that we have, we're going to make sure that we maximize all those players with what they can do because of the confidence I have in our coaching staff.
Philosophically, do you see any value in expending draft capital, particularly this year, at the position of quarterback, when the intent of them to be solely a backup or even some type of successor down the road? Is there any value for you, given where you guys are right now at the signing curve? You can go do it in post-draft, free agency.
Yeah, man. So the good question. So the quarterback position it's got to be, in all of sports, right? No one has solved that puzzle, right? It's not a perfect science. We wish it was, but it's just not. So, and you look at different drafts, and you look at the history of drafts, and over the last 10 years, and you look at quarterbacks, and there's times that, hey, there's a few in the draft, there's time there's none, there's time that it's just unique, and it's the most important position in football, right? It's such a critical spot. So to the question earlier about how Green Bay has operated and how some other teams have operated, I think you have to think like that because it is and it's all you're going to weigh it, right? Because again, it's our board, it's how we see the players. But if we see a player that we believe can be a franchise quarterback at any point, whether it's this draft, next draft, whether it's a player we can trade for, whatever it is, then you have to bring that player in because, again, we're talking about the next 4 to 5 years plus when we're talking about guys that we're drafting. And so no different than when we talk about any other position. Like you said, if you can say it's surplus now, but it can be a major need down the road. So I think because of that and because of the magnitude of the effects and the impact of that position, then you always have to be willing to bring players in.
Yeah, Terry, we were up studying some of the edge rushers and the tackles and so forth. It looks like, that group, there might be some pressure players. Could you talk about the edge rushing group and the pressure players, how you all are feeling about that going into the draft? And then the medicals are going to be big up high at one position, and how you all are handling and grading the medical grades on some of the potential picks at 8. And then any update from Calais Camp.
Last question.
The last question.
So
edge rusher, pressure players, medicals, Calais Camp.
It's 4.
That was definitely the last one.
So medical. Just like you talked about earlier, we go through those exhaustive meetings. Jake Fowler and Kyle Hammond, they're at the combine. They go through that. There's times that you don't get if a player wasn't at the combine, you bring them in to get more medical, and so you go through that process. But you have the experts going through that process. We get cross-checks. We spend a lot of time on that, and then we listen to the experts. But, again, it's all risk assessment. You have to look at also that player and that player's makeup in terms of, okay, this is the medical grade. This is what we expect with this player. This is the makeup of the player. This is what we expect him to get the most out of himself. So it's just it's a weighing process. It really is. It's truly risk assessment and a weighing process. Some good pass rushers, not just at outside linebacker. There's defensive ends. There's defensive tackles. There's some good pass rushers in this draft. There's different types. You got the guys that win with power, the guys that win more with speed. You got the well-rounded players, the versatile players that you can move around. It's a premier position. Not just saying the outside linebacker is a premier position, the defensive. If you have a pressure player, it is. It's premier, no different than a corner, right? Those are premier positions. And so at any point, if you can get them, doesn't matter what you have in your building, if you can get them, you definitely want to get them. And there's some good ones in this draft, I would say, at both positions. What else did you ask, Led? Calais. Yeah, again, no update at this point, but we'll never close any doors. We'll get through the draft, and then once we get through the draft, we always go through the players that are available, and what we can do. It's a 24/7, 365 process, the roster building. We're never stopping. The roster is never set, so we won't close any doors.
Thanks,
Was that it?
Yeah.
That was the 4? All right, thank you, guys.
Has Kurt been on the field?